I released a short video of me reacting to the newest change to Red Mage that came in patch 7.4, and people were pretty vocal about their own thoughts of the change itself. But while in the making of that short video, it made me think about job identity and how 2-minute burst meta is very much overstaying its welcome. I recommend you to stay throughout the whole video as I bring up a lot of points of why I think the way that I do, and I want to encourage discussion between us in a friendly and not heated way. I want to hear your personal take on the matter. By the way, the background footage will be spoiler free so you can watch the video safely. In patch 7.4 we got some job changes as we usually get in every major patch. Some nerfs, some buffs, but one specific change caught me off guard, and that is the Red Mage change where Manification now allows you to do your melee combo from a distance. Though this only applies to the usage of Manification and not the entirety of your melee combo, as your default melee combo, aka when you have 50 red mana, still requires you to be in melee range. I'm sure you're wondering, well, why is this such a big deal? Red Mage still has its melee combo and only the 2 minutes are ranged. And that is true, but the reason of making this video and bringing the whole job identity into question is that this change was made because of consistency for red mages in combat, especially during every 2 minutes, allowing red mages to not struggle with their 2-minute bursts in bosses that don't allow you to get close to. So this change is to make red mages more consistent and make their bursts reliable and ready for every 2-minute bursts. But making Manification work like this, making it easier and simpler, it removes the need of planning ahead as a red mage, as the need of getting close every once in a while for your melee combo puts red mages in this very unique situation that every melee combo needs to be considered on when and how they should be used, which is always different in every encounter. Even though the answer is obvious of why they did this, for the sake of the gameplay loop that we currently have in the game and bringing red mage closer to its counterparts, as most of the other jobs don't really struggle in their 2-minute burst as much as red mage. But this is where our problem lies. The 2-minute burst meta has stayed here for so long and is probably, if not the culprit behind the job homogenization, by syncing all the jobs together with their buffs and big hits to make the biggest value of the buffs. As in the past, the buffs were hardly ever aligned and people were very annoyed how, because of this, specific comps would be preferred for their utility in comparison to other jobs that hardly ever benefit the team. And well, FF14 delivered and made almost every job work exactly the same. And now, funnily enough, players are getting tired of how similar every job feels. There's almost nothing unique between jobs, for either balancing purposes to make them more in line with 2-minute burst meta, or for other completely different reasons, which is making a job more accessible for players to play, which we will be touching on that briefly as I also want to expand on that a bit myself. So let's circle back to Red Mage and its change to Manification. Even though the change has only been made for Manification and not Red Mage's basic rotation, it doesn't mean that a future change won't happen where Red Mage's default melee combo will have increased range for the sake of accessibility for either players or future encounters. If you think that's maybe a far-fetched idea, jobs like Astrologian and Summoner have shown how willing Square is willing to rework a job to a almost unrecognizable gameplay style, even if the previous playstyle had people that enjoyed it. And Dawn Trail, a job that got pretty massive rework and had a big reaction in the community, was Black Mage. Hate it or love it, Black Mage since its launch has remained to be the third job that people ended up falling in love with, a gameplay style that remained unchanged only until recently, removing the long cast times and allowing Black Mage not only to be able to slide cast more easily, but also looking more approachable to new players, as for many years Black Mage was the job that had the least amount of players playing it. Square has said that the changes of Black Mage was mainly for the future fights that are faster and don't give the availability to stand still and cast, so they removed that gameplay style of Black Mage. But in my honest opinion, even though true that most of the recent Savages and Extremes, or even just normal fights, are a lot faster than most of the combat content, they aren't fast enough to issue such a drastic change to Black Mage, which makes me believe that the change was to make players that were afraid of Black Mage to finally be able to get into the job and play play it, as it was easier and simpler to handle. When this change was made, many Black Mage mains stopped enjoying the job. Some completely gave up on the job and moved to other jobs like Pictomancer, for example, giving a similar toolkit to the now reworked Black Mage and yet have a more fun and unique gimmick than Black Mage. This change had nothing to do with the 2-minute burst meta, but it felt more targeted to the job being more accessible to the wider audience, which by trying to appeal to everyone, it ends up appealing to no one. Side tangent here. As someone that is a Black Mage main and cleared Pandemonium 10 Savage when it was current, which was considered at the time the fastest Savage in the game, and Walker Black Mage that had fewer instant casts and longer cast times, was very difficult but absolutely doable, and the feeling of mastering a fight with a drop that has so many weaknesses and struggles for the specific fight is nothing like we have nowadays. So if they're willing to rework a job as iconic as Black Mage this drastically, what makes you believe that Red Mage or any other job won't get changed in a way that will make it more accessible and capable of dealing with future fights? Let us use a few examples. Could you imagine a day in the future where Monk would be given a spammable ranged attack and removing the need of you playing around your 6-sided stars, as you no longer need to use it, as now you can keep some uptime while disengaging with the boss? Currently, Monk is the current job, in my opinion, that has a distinct gameplay loop in comparison to the other melee jobs in the game, as Monk needs to learn the fight completely to know the moment where you can greed a few GCDs or use 6-sided stars effectively and not let it go to waste, as Monk doesn't have any other way of dealing damage from a distance. So planning when you should remain close or far away from the enemy is a crucial playstyle of Monk that many monks enjoy. It is indeed a difficult playstyle as it requires a lot of thinking ahead and remembering your perfect openings. Whenever I see a great monk in action, I can never take my eyes away with how impressive the way they play. Let's also use perfect balance of monk as another example. What if monk had no longer access to Celestial Revolution, and every time you use perfect balance, regardless of the inputs you do, you will always get a Elixir Burst and Rising Phoenix, which would lead to a consistent, without fail, Phantom Rush. That would remove the fail state of monk and would allow players that struggle to remember the combination of GCDs to trigger the right masterful blitz, or allow players that don't play a whole lot of monk to play consistently well and have no struggles at all. That would indeed make the job more appealing and less scary for those that don't play the job, but that would remove the core fun and playstyle that only monk can offer. Let's pick a healer for this final example, and this will be Scholar, the master of preemptive shielding and planning, the strongest shield healer that is capable of making scary attacks look like just a little scratch. The whole appeal of the job is learning the fight as you go and be able to use your strong shields to mitigate them, but there's a drawback to Scholar, and that is that the shields that Scholar offers, even though very strong, need to be a hard cast every time, unless you want to use a swift cast for it, adding to the risk of not being able to apply shields on time, as Scholar is not a reactive healer but a preemptive healer. But now let's just add one simple change for Scholar, which would remove this difficulty of the job. What if every shield GCD was an instant cast, akin to Sage? If this change was made to add more freedom and flexibility to what Scholar can do without the fear of not knowing when to use your shields effectively, if this change was made and shields remained as strong as they do right now, why would you ever pick Sage? Sage has weaker shields, and everything that Sage can do when it comes to mitigation, Scholar can do better. With this change, you would have people just ditch Sage for Scholar, making people that were playing Sage for how accessible and easy it is to move to a better and stronger shield healer, as now Scholar is given an instant cast for every shield like Sage, but would also make Scholar mains feel alienated, as the whole idea of planning your heals, shields and mitigation ahead of time and making the most value of your toolkit has been removed, and so has been the fun aspects been removed as well. I hope you get the picture of what I'm trying to say, as I could keep going on and on about multiple jobs and their uniqueness. But now I want to talk about something a bit more difficult, so I want to talk a little bit of how accessibility can really damage a game and remove its enjoyment by trying to appeal to every player in the world. Even though making more people capable of playing your game is a net gain, as not only more players will enjoy your game, regardless of their skills at playing the game, but also means that you will make more money by making the game accessible. I'm not talking about accessibility settings that makes players that have health problems to allow them to enjoy the game, but talking about a design choice to make everything in the game accessible accessible to a point that everything is so easy to understand, everything is so easy to get the hang of, and there's no risk to playing poorly as you never get punished for not putting the effort to do any better, as the game doesn't require you to know more than just the basics, and you'll just perform just as well. I feel like FF14 with the release of Dawntrail has slowly gotten out of its shell of making the game so easy and predictable, to the point that every boss encounter is not engaging nor interesting, and so far it has been a massive success. Casual and more hardcore players have been really loving the current combat content of the game, which shows that difficulty can in fact be fun even to casual players and give the satisfactory feeling of beating something that was pretty tough. I'm not talking about extremes or savages, mind you, I'm talking about normal content unlocked to everyone that has increased in difficulty by a little bit. I'll be honest, it feels like we had the training wheels of combat on until Dawntrail. If you're on Dawntrail currently and still don't understand some of the more common mechanics and attacks from the bosses of this expansion, I feel like you might need to practice a little bit more or pay more attention to the encounter itself. I do strongly blame Square Enix more for this than the players, as Square has been holding our hands throughout most of the content, even in optional content, to the point that you barely need to do anything in the game and you'll be performing just fine enough that you'll clear the content. Okay, now you might be asking, okay, what does accessibility have to do with job identity? Well, some of you might understand where I'm going with this, but if you don't know where I'm going with this, let me explain. Difficulty and accessibility are very much tied to how a job functions and are known for. Time to bring a few more examples. Let's pick the healers. We have White Mage, Sage, Scholar, and Astrologian. These 4 healers have their own difficulty on how easy or hard it is to perform well with. For example, White Mage is widely known for being a beginner-friendly healer, a healer that will teach you the core basics of healing and be easy enough that you can perform well with it, if you don't have a whole lot of experience with it. And then we have Astrologian, which in my opinion is the hardest healer to perform well with. It has a lot more buttons than White Mage and requires to weave a lot of their skills between their spells to make the most out of their toolkit. To some, this is incredibly daunting and the main reason why some people avoid playing Astrologian altogether. Same goes for Sage and Scholar, as Sage is pretty easy to understand and perform well with in comparison to Scholar, where they need to pre-plan their mitigation constantly. And most of their toolkits are hard casts that need to be respected, otherwise you'll miss out on your powerful shields altogether. And of course making the most out of your Fairies toolkit. But the real question is it that wrong for a job like Astrologian and Scholar to be this unapproachable? To be this difficult that your casual healer player doesn't want to interact with it? I think having jobs that are really good at their job being more difficult than their easier counterpart is perfectly fine. It doesn't alienate anybody because of their skill. If you want to play a pure healer or a shield healer but don't feel confident on your skills to perform well with the others, having access to White Mage and Sage allows you to play in that role and not have to stress of the other jobs. If you truly want to play Astrologian, for example, but the difficulty of the job makes you scared of it and you'd rather they would simplify the job because you don't want to learn its depth and unique playstyle for the sake of accessibility, I'm afraid that is not you wanting the job to be simpler for the sake of accessibility, but it comes across of you not wanting to put the effort of learning the job, and not that the job is unaccessible. The same goes for every other role in the game. Physical range have Dancer, that is the easiest phys range job, and having Bard, which is the tougher job. Black Mage used to be the toughest job in the magical DPS, and to be honest, still might be, but not to the degree of the previous expansions. But if you don't want to learn Black Mage, you had Summoner, which is the easiest job when it comes to the mages. Melee DPS, you have Monk, which is the toughest, and Reaper, which is the easiest. That or Viper, I'm not quite sure which one is easier. That way, not only are you given a varied roster of jobs with their own difficulty scaling that fits your taste and skills, but also allows players to seek either a easier or harder jobs for a more challenging experience, which I find not only gives identity to how every job plays and how different they are alongside their counterparts, but because FF14 encourages everybody to try and play every job to the point you are given a mount as a reward for maxing out every job in the game to 100, makes players feel forced to play jobs that otherwise they wouldn't, just for the sake of collecting the mount, which I feel that alone hurts the game tremendously. I think it's perfectly fine for you to not be experienced with every job in the game. I think it's fine for you to not wanting to play a job because it's too difficult for you, but the desire of making everything play and feel exactly the same for those players that, let's be real, won't even play those jobs after maxing them out to 100, towards the players that found the previous difficult jobs fun and engaging. This script is becoming longer than I thought, but I think I got my idea across pretty well. And now I would like to know your opinions on the matter. As there are so many players that play the game in their own way, I'm sure you have your own unique take on the matter and would like to expand on it, so all of us can better understand each other's side. But for now, I want to thank all of these wonderful peeps for allowing me to make these videos. Vardis, Resolute Visit, Zirin, Otrox, Mochi Fried-Off, and Mikey. If you want to support my channel like these peeps, you can check my Twitch channel, but for now I'll be seeing you on my next video.